All right, so we're going to get started today. I wanted to go through a quick agenda. And so right now, so today we're going to go through an introduction and Lake Country Clean Water updates. So that'll be pretty quick. Then we have Alan Barrows sharing naturalizing shorelines to prevent erosion and solutions for when that isn't enough. Um, and then Jeannie, and then Jeannie Shearer presenting on purple loosestrife biocontrol, how to safely promote conservation in your own backyard. For those who don't know me, my name is Brad Steckert. I'm the director for Lake Country Clean Waters. I'm the ex-AIS coordinator for Washington and Waukesha County, and I'm a local boat buster. This is a picture of me in action back in the day, busting boats for having invasive species on them. So one thing we promote is Clean Boats, Clean Waters from Lake Country Clean Waters. And we definitely promote that program. Alan will talk a little bit about that later. Currently, we do have a board of 6 people. We have Joyce Shepett, who's our treasurer, Susan Buchanan, Caroline Joyce, who's tied to UWM Freshwater Science, Jeff Lee, and Don Gallo is our president. And then most recently we have Jesse Jensen, who is, Jesse is our DNR person. So he's from the DNR. I think he's on the call as well. So we're excited to have him. So the next thing we're gonna do is an impromptu network party. All right, so we have 18 people on the call right now. And one thing that Lake Country Clean Waters is all about is being able to network with each other and being able to have each lake organization, each river organization, and conservation organization all be able to talk to each other and let each other know, what's going on in their world. So that's something that's kind of been lost in the past year. I know a lot of us have been feeling really isolated with COVID and being quarantined. And just because of that, I wanted to get everyone out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into some breakout rooms. I think I'm going to break us out into like 3 or 4 people per room. I just want you guys, I'll give us like 2 minutes, maybe 2.5, 3 minutes to give each other your name. Maybe you know each other, maybe you don't. This is going to be randomly selected. So give your name, what organization you're with, and then just real simple, something that you're excited to do on the water this summer. So what I'm going to do right now is actually set up some breakout rooms. And we will do, let's see. We'll do 3 to 4 participants per room. So you may be in a room. Feel free to come off your camera, come off mute, and just kind of open up with each other. Let people know where you're at and who you are. So here we go. You can go to your room. It should say, you should get an invitation to go to your room right now. So feel free to accept that and just go and join your room. Looks like people are coming back with some smiles on their face, so that's good. Yeah, feel free to stay off camera, you guys. It's kind of nice for me to be able to see you guys and like kind of feel like I'm talking to real people. So that's nice. And I'm sure Alan and Jeannie feel the same. So good. Well, that was fun. I think the next thing we're gonna do is, and feel free by the way to, if you have any questions or concerns throughout this entire meeting, feel free to type in the chat. I have the chat up. So if you have any questions or concerns or want me to address something in more detail, feel free to just type that in the chat while I'm going along here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a poll. So this is actually has to do with kind of what you were just talking about in your chat. What I'm going to do is set a poll out, and this is just asking you who you're associated with. So I'm going to launch this poll. It's going to look just like this, and it's going to ask you who you're most associated with, whether that be a lake district, a lake association, a river organization. Maybe you're a riparian landowner on a lake or river, but you're not associated with an organization. Maybe you're with the DNR or other type of conservation nonprofit. or maybe you're something altogether differently entirely. So go ahead and answer. I'll wait, wait until you're all done. We got 4 votes to go. Some people I know aren't able to see and they're just on the phone, so that probably could be why. Good, looks like we have a lot of others. So I'm curious if you put other, if you want to type in the chat why you put other in there, you're in some other type of district or some other sort of association, feel free to type that into the chat. But if not, I will keep on moving here and just make sure everyone's muted. Okay, good. All right. So Caroline's with LCCW, good. That's conservation nonprofit. And Pam asked if what if you're 3 or 4 of them? You're right, I only had you choose one, but that's okay. Just choose the one you're most closely, the one closest to your heart. I'll leave that open for another 10 seconds. So good, it's nice to gauge, and I'm actually taking a screenshot of this so I can save it. But it's nice to gauge where people are coming from. It's really nice to know kind of where we're at and who we're drawing into these meetings. So it's really kind of nice to know. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is just, I'm going to reiterate real quick what we did last year, some of our 2020 accomplishments. This is so in 2021, this is our second quarterly meeting already. It's really hard to believe that it's already April, but we're on our second meeting. Our next event is actually our annual Healthy Lakes and Rivers Conference. Then after that, we have one more quarterly meeting before we're already preparing for January again. So the year flies by, but here we are. Last year, we also had 3 quarterly meetings and 1 Healthy Lakes and Rivers Conference. We had over 200 people attending all of those events, and we had over 20 experts and professional presenters at those events, which is pretty awesome from all around the world. We had 15 water-related conservation topics that we covered that were all separate topics. And some of the highlighted presentations were, we had people from the UWM Freshwater Science Program, UW Extension. We had our Starry Stonewort study on Pike Lake from the Army Corps of Engineers. We had Washington and Waukesha County professionals, which once again today we're having some professional expertise from Waukesha County. We had sewer pack professionals, DNR, Wisconsin Lakes, and even accomplished authors like Ted Rolsch with some of his nice insight into our water. We had 5 donors donate to Lake Country Clean Waters in 2020. And we do all this through our amazing partnerships with Tall Pines Conservancy, the Oconomowoc Watershed Protection Program, Wisconsin Lakes, the DNR, and all of our other partners. And then we also, just so everyone knows, we operate on 1 part-time employee and a board of directors, which is completely volunteer. So that being said, kind of a dire announcement, but one that needs to be said for today is that we do run entirely off donations. So basically this year we're funded until our Healthy Lakes and Rivers Conference, which is June 4th. After that, we're pretty much out of money to be providing these awesome quarterly meetings. So it's sad, but that's just the facts. So we're continuing to seek partnerships. We're continuing to seek sponsorships for our conference. Currently, we're looking for corporate sponsorships for our Healthy Lakes and Rivers Conference, which is June 4th. Anyone who knows people who would like to do something like a corporate sponsorship, please reach out to me. I'm really happy to set that up. We have a donation structure that I'll share in a second here. And we will continue to seek donations from lake groups to be providing this, and river organizations as well. So just, this is just, it's just one of those facts where we're a nonprofit organization. We run off by the skin of our teeth. We have a shoestring budget. And so it's just, please consider donating or asking the organization that you're associated with to donate. And one thing, we're also trying to be creative. So this is just another poll question just to ask you guys if you'd be willing to pay for these meetings. So this is anonymous. I think it's anonymous, but either way, I won't judge you. I'm going to launch this poll. It's asking if you'd be willing to donate to pay to attend a quarterly meeting like this, would you be willing to pay anything from $0 to $50? I just did increments of 10 to attend the next Lake Country quarterly meeting. We do charge for our conference. I think this year we're charging $30 if you're not having a lunch and $40 if you're having a lunch. But this is just asking for quarterly meetings. Knowing that we're running on a shoestring budget and trying to make ends meet, yeah, I just want to gauge your interest here. Okay, so it looks like people are mostly saying about $20 is something that they'd be willing to pay. It looks like 8 people said about $20, so that's cool. A couple of people said 10, one person said 50. Go you, whoever said that, you're awesome. That's really cool. Thanks, guys. Good to know that these meetings seem somewhat important to you guys in that you'd pay some money to see them. That being said, our Healthy Lakes and Rivers Conference is coming up, and that is on June 4th. So like I just said, we're really excited. We're super excited for this year. We're seeking sponsorships. What I'm most excited about is we're having this in person at the Oconomowoc Community Center. If you still feel more comfortable being socially distant, we totally respect that and want you to also be able to attend. So we'll be holding it both at the community center, but we'll also be live streaming it over Zoom. One of the things I'm really excited about is that when we do this in person, 2 years ago to now, we did it with pontoon boats and we went out on Lac La Belle. Those boats were donated by Shorehaven, which unfortunately can't donate boats this year because they're under strict CDC guidelines that they obviously, I mean, it's a place that has a lot of people who are at risk. So they don't want anyone really getting near that place. So if anyone has pontoon boats that they'd want to donate for the day to take people out on and go around the lake at Lac La Belle, please contact me. We're gonna be seeking out some pontoons. And then we'll also have a fundraising event, a cocktail hour at the Golden Mast Inn after the event. So that'll be at 5 o'clock later in the evening. We'll have a little cocktail hour. So that'll be kind of fun too. So you can register here. All right. So yeah, we're really excited for that. It's also, if you go to lakecountrycleanwaters.org, it's there too. And then just a couple more announcements here. I'm almost done. We have our Lake and River Organization Annual Recognition Award. So last year, North Lake Management District got it. What it is it's a paddle that travels from lake to lake. And if each year somebody else is going to win this, and the hope is that all the organization names will be engraved onto this paddle, and then later on we'll get a new paddle. So this year North Lake Management got it. In 2021, who knows who's going to get it? You can actually apply for it by filling out a form at lakecountrycleanwaters.org. So go ahead and fill that out for your organization. Then one more really cool announcement is, as a lot of you probably know, Sam Lammers is no longer the AIS coordinator for Washington and Waukesha County, but we have a new AIS coordinator who's starting mid-May, I think, and Alan can confirm that. But they're starting soon, and his name is Eric Hansen. He's from Missoula, Montana, and this dude's resume is just stocked. It's like packed full. He's like by far the most educated AIS coordinator pro that we've had in the area. So I just wanted to put, this is directly from his cover letter, some of the stuff that he's done, like developed AIS management plans, hired watercraft inspectors, conducted outreach and education. So he really seems like he's going to be able to come in and hit the ground running. So we're really excited to have him. He's also got his PhD in environmental science and a master's in environmental management. So pretty excited to have Eric on board. I'm excited to meet him. I haven't talked to him yet, but I think he's going to do a really great job. Another cool announcement, we have a new Lake Country Clean Waters brochure. This is one end of it, and it's pretty cool. It has all the lake names of Lake Country. It's got some cool pictures, got our mission, vision, and values on the front side. On the back, it has what we do, and then it also has a donation form. So if you're interested in getting some of these for your lake organization or river organization, feel free to reach out to me or anyone in Lake Country Clean Waters, and we'll get that to you. once again, we're looking for sponsorships. I know I keep reiterating myself, but really this is the only way we're going to keep going. So there are different levels of sponsorships that we have. This is on our website, lakecountrycleanwaters.org as well. If you know any corporations or corporate sponsorships, anyone who promotes conservation initiatives, who has grants, who does sponsorships, professionals that would like us to speak at their meeting or conference, we're happy to do that. So please keep that in mind and keep Lake Country Clean Waters in mind for your organization. And one more survey question really quick. This one will be a real short one. So that one was 65% do donate. 61% donate, 22% do not donate, and 17 are not sure. All right, cool. Well, moving forward, we've had this the whole since we started this year, but we have a calendar photo contest. So next year, pending our organization surviving, we will love to make a calendar and sell it to people. And so feel free to send any cool photos to info@lakecountrycleanwaters.org. And then we also have Lake of the Month. So if you think your lake should be featured, send me a few reasons why for the same email address. So also just quick schedule. Healthy Lakes Conference is Friday, June 4th. Lake Country Clean Waters Festival is held at Pewaukee Lake Beachfront, and that'll be June 25th. And then our next quarterly meeting after that is September 22nd. So with all of those announcements, thank you guys for letting me spend 25 minutes of your time. Our next announcement is Alan Barrows. He is the Parks and Land Resources Manager for the Department of Parks and Land Use in Waukesha County. So with that, I just stopped sharing my screen and I'm going to let Alan share his. So Alan, if you can see it, take it away.
I'm getting close.
Good.
Okay. Now, Brad, are you seeing my full screen or my presenter's view?
Nope, I see your full screen.
Full screen. Excellent.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
Well, thanks, Brad. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to this group, and I'm seeing a lot of familiar names on the Zoom call. My name is Alan Barrows, and I'm the new Land Resources Division Manager. My predecessor, Perry Lindquist, who had worked for Waukesha County for 22 years in this capacity, retired in February. And then in March, I received the promotion to Land Resources Manager. And so this is my 6th week on the job, but I've worked for Waukesha County since 2002 as a senior conservation specialist. And so I've been working with lakes for a number of years now, doing shoreline restoration work. The bulk of my time with Waukesha County was actually in our stormwater management and erosion control permit program, where I did plan reviews, compliance inspections, permit issuance, and all the fun things that go along with stormwater management. We're still issuing nearly 100 permits per year, and development seems to be very active despite the global pandemic. And so what I want to do today is talk to you a little bit about 3 shoreline restoration projects that we've worked on using native vegetation and bioengineering. And I really like that approach to shoreline restorations, not only for the aesthetic that it provides, but also because of the deep-rooted native vegetation that comes along with these restoration projects that really helps to create an environment where the soil along the river's edge, the lake's edge, is held there by nature. It's slow to establish, it can be expensive, but has many benefits, including pollinator habitat and wildlife habitat, that I think has a real benefit versus using hard armoring. With that being said, there are some projects where hard armoring using riprap is really the solution, just due to the type of energy that you're trying to address. And then I want to spotlight a project that we've got coming up with a riverbank restoration project along the Fox River, and then give an update on our AIS program. This first project goes back to 2015. I was contacted by a gentleman that owned about 400 feet on Roxy Pond in Maguanago. And he was having issues, obviously, with trees falling into the water. And he was striking out by reaching out to the Maguanago Park staff across Roxy Pond from him. And he, the park staff over there is busy maintaining their side of the Roxy Pond Lake. And one day somebody pointed them to me, and I had the ability to work with this landowner to try to address the concerns that he was having with shoreline erosion. So I did a site visit with the owner, and as you can see in this picture, the vegetation along his lake shore was very dense brush, and there was not a lot of sunshine getting down to that soil to create an understory that could actually hold the soil in place. We worked with Mr., I won't say his name, but we worked with the owner, and I was able to obtain a $40,000 grant for him. Because when we looked at this project, it wasn't just this edge of the water, but it was about a 1/4 acre of land that really needed management. We needed to get the invasive species out of there so that any approach that we took to solving this would have a long-term success rate. We had the opportunity to bid it in a number of fashions. And ultimately, we had 3 ecological restoration companies that expressed interest in this project. In February, while it was cold, we had the first step to go in there and remove all the invasive brush. And all the native trees were flagged so that they didn't get cut. And we were able to thin this out a little bit to understand better what was going on that edge. And keep an eye on these trees that are on the water's edge. As you'll see, we work through the project, these trees continue to fall in. In April of that year, we were ready to start the project with bringing in the contractors and beginning to do the edge work. The plans that we developed for the owner included a biolog application along the water's edge, the establishment of emergent native vegetation at the water's edge, but then also seeding that entire 1/4 acre along this edge of the property to establish a riparian buffer. The biolog installation went in with the contractors physically standing in the water and installing the biologs. And you can see some of the vegetation that started to come up along that shoreline before the native seeding was ever done. So you have some Mayaples, we had Pennsylvania sedge, and the things that nature had been preventing from growing there because of the dense brush in the way started to pop. And we really didn't have a whole lot of invasives that we needed to deal with in that area. And that made our job a little bit easier, that we didn't also have to deal with some of the other more aggressive invasive species like reed canary grass and such that sometimes will pop up in those areas and require another level of effort to try to establish native vegetation. So here we are in May of 2016. In June of 2016, vegetation starts to grow in. The emergent vegetation hasn't popped along the edge yet. I believe my last picture here of this particular project was in September of that same year. An additional tree had dropped in. Those trees we were leaving to the greatest extent possible. I'm standing on the owner's pier. And so they already had an access point. So any of those trees that would fall in, we considered to be good habitat for fish. And so the intent was that we would leave them in place and allow them to do their habitat as long as they weren't disturbing the edge where the biolog application was done. I have one more photo. I think this was probably October of that same year. And I haven't been back to the property since. I hope that it's continuing to establish the native wildflowers and grasses that we planted there. But But the challenge associated with getting this project done was really the cost. Again, $40,000 is not easy for any riparian owner to shell out. And in this particular case, we were able to get 90% cost share. So the owner's share was $4,000, and the county took the lead in terms of doing the essentially construction management and oversight on the owner's behalf, and really was pretty hands off. And so it was a very exciting project, and the owner has been very excited about this ever since, and something that I look back on as being a real success. Another project in the Mukwonago area that I wanted to spotlight is a project that grew out of this particular project that you're seeing on your screen right here. So for those of you that are familiar with Indian Head Park in the village of Mukwonago, this is on the main stem of the Mukwonago River. Now, just downstream is the dam. So this really does behave much more like a lake than it does a river, but does have flowing water and is a very popular area during the summertime for families to recreate and play. The village of Mukwonago undertook this particular project, which was, again, a biolog application, and biologs are made out of coconut fiber. So they hang around and don't biodegrade for 10 to 15 years, but the intent is over time that the native vegetation will take over, the biologs will biodegrade, and the system will be a stabilized system. This was pretty early in our experiences with biologs, and what we did with this one was we stacked 3 biologs high to meet a height of about 36 inches where that vertical face of the bank was, with the intent that the water would wick up through these coconut logs and keep them in a moist state to support wetland vegetation. What we've learned is that water does not wick up through these biologs like that. And so we did have to come back and do some additional plantings on this to put more of an upland species along those logs. But that was a lesson learned and goes back to probably 2006 when this particular project was done. And that's what it looked like from the beach. There was also native brush planted. And if you go to Indian Head Park now, it's still maintained very well and looks really, really nice. There's some stone outcroppings as well that were put because this is a popular fishing area. We did not want people to stand on the native vegetation. So giving somewhere an area for people to be able to stand and use the water's edge like that without disturbing the vegetation was really important from the village of Mukwonago's perspective. Looking across the river, this was the view. And this was a property that was owned by WI Energies. And the Indian Head Park project was about $100,000. And we looked across the river, we said, we got to be able to do something about this. Well, we were able to obtain funding for this, but being that it was owned by WI Energies, there was a lot of legal and a lot of communication that needed to be taken care of before we were able to enter the property, contract for construction, and all the things that go along with this. Same thing about a 30 to 40 inch vertical face and a lot of brush and non-native vegetation growing. We were able to obtain the funding for the project, work through the permitting process with the Wisconsin DNR. The village of Mukwonago offered to help. In fact, we signed a five-way working agreement between WI Energies, Village of Mukwonago, Waukesha County, Fox River Commission, and a contractor to come in to do this restoration project. We came in here, we cleaned off all the non-native vegetation to get a better idea of what the riverbank looked like. And then the next step is to install this turbidity barrier. So this is one of the things I wanted to talk with this group about, because this can be a real cost issue for projects. If you are contracting for construction to do this, a question to ask your contractor is whether or not they have turbidity barrier available. This is very, very expensive. And if they have turbidity barrier, it can save quite a few $1,000 versus a firm that may need to go out and buy this just for one particular project. Because the Wisconsin DNR will require this type of barrier in the water, because you'll see as we're working, it does churn up some of the soil and some of the sediments right along the water's edge. So here's the turbidity barrier going in, and then the start of the project. Now, another bioengineering technique that we use is a soil-filled bag. So in this particular project, we're using something called the EnviroLock bags. Now, EnviroLock bags can be filled with a variety of materials. In this case, the bottom course along the water, actually within the water, is filled with just a clear stone inside this geotextile bag. The geotextile bag is UV stabilized. The idea, similar to a biolog, is that it will stay in place for 10, 15 years until all the vegetation can grow in place and establish a more healthy system that does not require all of the synthetic materials in there. The upper bags that we'll show you in just a moment were filled with a mix of sand and compost to create a growing environment for the plants. So here's what that process looks like. I was going to say that this guy kind of looks like Brad, but that isn't Brad. The bottom courses go in. Between each course of these bags, which are stacked like bricks, have 3 native plants per bag. So the bags are placed and then hand tamped so that they're compacted together, and 3 plants are put between each one. We did use some geogrid on portions of it just to make sure that the flowing water of the river wouldn't take this out in a flood condition. And so, yeah, during the process, it can be a little rough looking. And then between each course of bags is a spike system that comes along with the EnviroLock bag to lock them together so that they don't move from left to right or front to back. And you can again see some of the geo web there that goes between some of these layers to tie that back into the bank. That's what the project looked like after about 7 days. And we did put in an irrigation line because, again, being native vegetation, it's going to need a little help in its first year of establishment to make sure that the germination is successful and we don't have to spend a lot of time fighting some of the weeds that can pop up. We also did a 15-foot native buffer along the top edge of this restoration project. And another view from the bridge that goes over the river. We included a snow fence along the top because this is a very popular area for geese. What we didn't anticipate was children swimming across the river from the beach and using this as like a cliff diving area. So we had to come back through and do some additional signage on the other side of the fence to keep the kids off of it because it was very inviting. And so we got snarled at a little bit by having to tell the kids not to climb on it. But these areas are very sensitive. And so we needed to make sure that the efforts that we were putting into the restoration project were successful. So this is a picture from June of 2017. That is a panoramic picture from across the way. And then 1 year later, vegetation explodes. And this is, all those geotextile bags disappear behind the vegetation and really does start to create a much more pleasing and stable environment. And this project came in at about $100,000 as well. So the investment in this about 350-foot long section of the McGuanago River was nearly $200,000 over the course of a few years. Another McGuanago area project that I wanted to spotlight for you was this is at McGuanago Park. And in all of our county parks, we're always evaluating areas that we're mowing like turf and whether or not it's really actually necessary. So here is an area right along the swimming beach at McGuanago Park that was being mowed, and you can just see the turf section sloughing off. And this was another one where we wanted to use biologs as a method for shoring up that water's edge and then creating a riparian buffer. So we killed off the existing vegetation. I think we stripped it off like sod so that we didn't have to use a lot of chemicals. Underneath that was sand because that was an old beach at one point. So we knew that the vegetation had to be adapted to essentially growing in a thin veneer of organics over sand with water in it. Fortunately, we have a conservation biologist in our department, and so she was very helpful in getting us to make sure that the plants and the selections of the seeds were done correctly. And that's what the project looked like a year later. So again, green snow fence to keep the geese away, biologs along the water's edge with plant plugs as an emergent vegetation on the edge, and then a nice riparian buffer with upland. I think there's a lot of brown-eyed Susan in there and then some other things. At McGuanago Park, we actually have a special seed mix we like to use for our restoration areas. So this was a seed mix that we custom ordered. And you can see some of the other native vegetation starting to grow. So the considerations that I always recommend landowners keep in mind are number one, cost, number two, aesthetics, and number three, access. So in the upper left-hand corner, that picture is a skid loader with a pallet of these Envirolock bags and a hydraulic excavator. In this case, we had all of our bags pre-filled by a company off-site. They were able to stitch those bags shut, so the contractor was able to get these bags in place and didn't need to deal with filling the bags on site. The picture in the upper right-hand corner is another project that we did using the Envirolock bags. They used to be black till they realized in the heat of the summer, the temperature associated with the black geotextile would actually bake some of the plants. So they've gone from a black bag to a brown bag, which I think was a great choice. In this particular project, this is a crew of county employees using a traffic cone and a pile of soil and sand mixed together to fill these bags and zip tie them. So if you have 4 people available to fill bags, that's wonderful, but not every project will have that type of area available to do this type of work. To have your bags pre-filled, it costs extra money. But in some cases where you've got limitations in terms of workspace, it's a way to get around having to do that prep work. In the lower left-hand corner, that's actually a picture at Nagawaki Park, where we did an Envirolock bag project along Lake Nagawicka's beach. And the Sheriff's Department has a pontoon boat. So we were able to borrow the Sheriff's Department pontoon boat and deliver our Envirolock bags via boat. There was just no way to get the materials to the site without using a boat. And so access can be a real limitation. And then on the lower right-hand side is a picture of biologs that I had delivered to School Section Lake. And I got a phone call from the semi-truck driver, and he called me and said, "Where do you want them?" And because he said, "You need to get out here with a forklift." And well, I don't have a forklift. So I had to get in the car real quick and go help the semi driver unload these, but without having a spot to unload, 50 biologs off of the back of a truck, this could be a real limitation to getting a project completed. This Fox River Park project I wanted to spotlight because it brings in another funding source that many of you are probably familiar with because of your proximity to the OWPP. The Fox River Park, we are pursuing adaptive management funds from the village of McGuanago's wastewater treatment plant. And this is the riverbank that's right at the park, close to Highway I. And it is 300 feet of riverbank that is absolutely collapsed and falling in. Now, this is a project that also has invasive species. So this is looking at invasive brush on the riverbank. And you can see in this picture where it transitions from a wooded area then to a area that is largely reed canary grass, but it transitions from a wooded area into an open area. So this is the area that we're looking to restore. In 2014, Grafe, a local engineering firm, did an erosion study for the Fox River Commission, identifying areas of erosion and then rating them based on severity. And out of the area that they surveyed, which was from the Barstow impoundment in Waukesha to the Waterford impoundment, out of all of the areas that they surveyed, this project at Fox River Park was the #1 priority project and showed up on the maps. And so behind the scenes, Waukesha County's been working on this for a long time. They had identified that entire outside bend of the river as being highly eroded. And that is probably, I would say, 600 feet long. And if we look at what the cost would be to restore that, say that's $200 per lineal foot, that's the type of funding that takes years to obtain. So Waukesha County's been working behind the scenes to obtain funding from a number of different sources. And I'm excited to say that this is on our project list for 2022. And as we work through our grant applications, permitting process, it's something that I think will be a real asset to not only the county parks, but also the greater community of paddle sports enthusiasts on the Fox River. The Fox River is working towards a designation with the National Park Service as a national water trail, and access points along the Fox River are difficult. Most of them are highway crossings over the river, and so having a launch area available with restrooms and parking, I think it will be a real asset for the community. Okay. Waukesha County AIS update. As Brad had indicated earlier, we've got a new AIS coordinator that's coming to us from Montana named Eric Hansen. He's going to start on May 10th. And the way that this works is Waukesha County and Washington County share an AIS coordinator. They actually are a Washington County employee, and then they're contracted for their time with Waukesha County. So I'm guessing on the 10th, Eric will be in West Bend, but we'll have him down here as soon as possible. And one of the reasons why I'm really excited about that is because Waukesha County has entered into 6 intergovernmental agreements with lakes groups to provide the Clean Boats, Clean Waters watercraft inspectors from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Every year we get a little bit more traction with regard to lakes groups that are interested in engaging with us on this Clean Boats, Clean Waters. I'm excited to say that Middle Genesee and Lower Genesee Lake signed an IGA with us. So we went from 5 weekend inspectors last year to 6 inspectors this year. And then we always hire 2 full-time inspectors that also do survey work and education and outreach work throughout the week. So we'll have a total of 8 interns. So I'm working through that process of hiring those interns right now without the benefit of having the coordinator in place. So middle of May for us is going to be very, very busy because we've got a whole bunch of new faces that are going to show up in the office. What Waukesha County's been doing is we offer about 16 hours of training before we put any of the watercraft inspectors out on the landscape. So we do a half day of policy work, and that's everything from anti-discrimination to drug abuse and all the things that go along with being a Waukesha County employee. Then we also do a customer service training with our interns so that they've got the tools that they need to do high-level customer service. And then, of course, they go through the Clean Boats, Clean Waters, watercraft inspection training. And so before they are sent out on Labor Day to do that work or Memorial Day to do that work, they've been fully trained and geared up with their t-shirts and ready to do inspections. And the picture here on the left-hand side was some of our interns and Jane Jenks and Sam from last summer. And I got to tell you, it is so much fun working with these folks. They're really excited to get out there and do these watercraft inspections. So I'm just thrilled that we're able to keep the program going. And a lot of it is due to the support from the lakes groups that are part of this organization. And it really helps us to work collectively to deliver a great program. There is I'm sure this group is probably aware of it, but we do AIS newsletters. If you're not currently receiving the newsletter, feel free to go to the Waukesha County website, and there's a button to sign up to receive those updates and newsletters. So at this time, if there's any questions for me with regard to what I was talking about with Envirolock bags or biologs, I'm happy to try to answer any questions. My contact information is listed below. Again, I'm the Waukesha County Land Resources Manager, and my phone number and email is right there. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Brad. Thank you
very much. Alan, that was awesome. I definitely have some questions. There was a couple that also came into the chat. One that I had and came into the chat was, can you share your custom seed mix? I was like, that
yeah, of course.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so I'm guessing you worked with Julia. And so my question kind of goes off of that. Did you choose specific aquatic plants, 2 emergent plants, 2 terrestrial plants, all in a row? Yeah, you did. Okay.
Yeah, and I would be happy to share the mixes from all of those projects. So the background on this is when you're taking on a project like this, it's several different areas of expertise. So those folks that are running the excavators and doing the soils and all that stuff, it's very much grading contractor heavy. Those are the kinds of equipment that they need. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the coin, you need plant biologists that understand the wetness regimes. They understand the other species that are there. They'll understand the landowner's desire for height. They'll understand the blooming dates and all that. And I guess the benefit you can have is that you can hire multiple contractors and have them work collectively, or you can hire a firm that has all of those types of people in place. So in each of those projects, we have a different seed mix based on the recommendations by the biologists.
That's awesome. Daryl asked, I don't know if you probably see it on the chat, Alan, but he said, what level of nutrient release can happen from biologists planting medium? Say compost plus seed.
Right. Daryl, that's a very good question. And that same question also comes up with the use of bioretention basins. And there's some really good studies that are going on that can talk about that. One of the things that we've discovered is that you do not need a lot of organic compost in those mixes. You just need enough to create an environment where those plants can survive. So in those bags, we're oftentimes going with a 70% sand, 30% compost to cut down on the potential for doing increases in phosphorus leaching out of those bags into the waterway. So it's a very good point. Thank you.
Totally. You don't want to put those bags in and then see a huge algae bloom come up downriver because of compost. Yeah. It
is a tricky balance to meet. And again, the idea is to try to create a growing environment for those plants to get started, but they don't really need it long term.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, that was really great, Alan. Thanks so much for sharing, and thanks for taking the time to come on the call. It was exciting for me, and if anyone else has further questions, you are more than welcome to keep entering them into the chat. Something pops up later, we can share these. I'm taking notes, so feel free to keep going. Tom, if a homeowner wants to do a project on his own, can he call the county for a suggested mix?
Am I muted? No,
No,
okay.
you're good.
Certainly. And we have resources here that can help you as well. So as we had referenced, we have a conservation biologist in our Parks Division. Her name is Julia Robson. She's fantastic to work with. We have landscape architects. Yeah, certainly we're happy to point you in the right direction. And I gotta tell you, the seed nurseries too that we work with are very helpful as well. So there's lots of resources available to help you, depending on, again, the aesthetics, the height, the wetness regime, and some of your goals and objectives of your project.
Sweet. All right, if people still have questions, feel free to keep entering them to the chat, but I'm gonna transfer it to the next presenter because we are right on time right now. So we're going from the lakes to the emergent vegetation here. And I want to introduce Jeannie Schurer. So she's the AIS outreach specialist and statewide Purple Loosestrife biocontrol coordinator and she's 100% UW Extension. So with that short introduction, Jeannie, I'll hand it over to you, and I can see your screen perfectly. So as soon as you start talking, I'll let you know I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect, can hear you.
So thanks for inviting me tonight. My title there isn't exactly what Brad had on there, but doing biocontrol safety is a huge issue, safely. So we definitely are going to address that here and talk about how anybody can participate. As the AIS outreach specialist for Extension Natural Resources Institute, I do a lot of support for our AIS prevention program. So the Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Program, which includes everything from helping people get the brochures and materials they need to helping new coordinators get oriented to the overall program and the partnership that we have across the state, which DNR recently grew by changing from a competitive grant system to a system now where every county can apply for a set amount of money. It depends on the county, the number of access points in this very complicated model. I don't even try to understand, but and then they can always supplement through additional grants and whatever. But to get the basic things done, like the Clean Boats, Clean Waters trainings for people and supporting that program, and CLMN, the Systematic Monitoring Network, and many other things, including the Purple Loosestrife Biocontrol Program, which I'm the coordinator for also. So on to that. If I can get my screen to move here. There we go. So I'm just going to go over what our Purple Loosestrife biocontrol is, what biocontrol actually is, and why we're doing it here in Wisconsin, and then just how people do it and get involved. So biocontrol can raise red flags. A lot of people, the first thing they'll think of is something like the Asiatic lady beetles, which they aren't as bad at my house as they used to be, but boy, 10 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I remember going to any sunny location in, I think it was probably late summer, and it would be covered with the Asian beetles, the same way that the box elder, you know how box elder beetles will come out and cover everything at certain times of year. Well, the Asian lady beetles will do the same thing, and then nesting in the walls of the house. And I occasionally, I have some on a windowsill right now I need to clean up. So they're not as bad as they used to be, but so that it can raise a red flag for people, because those were originally brought in, I think something to do with corn, in managing a pest on corn. But the process behind it, or the reasoning behind it is really basic biology. Biocontrol is one species taking care of another one to control it, to keep its numbers in check. So we have native biocontrol going on all the time. If you've got barn owls and they're eating mice and ground squirrels on your farm, that's biocontrol. I have a lot of great pictures of osprey eating cold koi and goldfish, because unfortunately people release them into ponds and lakes and rivers thinking, oh, you know, free willy and all that. And actually what's happening is they're impacting the native species, as well as not helping that fish, because they're so easy for a heron or an osprey or any other bird that eats fish to see. Another problem with that is the koi. If some of you may remember, about 5 years ago, they carry a virus that in warm weather gets released to carp. And we had tens of thousands, tons probably, of dead carp floating down the Rock River from Horicon Marsh, where some koi had been released. So thank goodness for some of that biocontrol that's taking place naturally. And then we have non-native versus non-native. So in the case of the purple loosestrife beetles, purple loosestrife is native to Europe and Asia. And the beetles that were eventually imported for this program are also native there. So they help keep the plant in check. So when we bring in a non-native species to do the work, it's really based on that relationship, that coevolution. You know, the reason purple loosestrife survives so well in Wisconsin, and once really was surviving well, is because there was nothing here that ate it. Pollinators like it, but they're not impacting the fitness of the plant. They're not doing anything that reduces its level to reproduce. They're actually helping. So in this case, the Galaricella beetles are used because they live their entire life cycle on purple loosestrife. They eat it, they lay their eggs on it, they pupate in the soil around it, and they come back up, eat some more, go back to sleep at the roots, and then come back up the next year to lay eggs again. You can't use a control species. They test hundreds of species, sometimes to try to find the right one and make sure that it's not going to attack any of the natives that are in the area, particularly those closely related. We do have a couple of native loosestrife species, and when they were brought in, the beetles and weevils that were tested here, in that case, it wasn't hundreds, but when they were brought in, they had to make sure they weren't going to harm anything else in the state, or lead to some kind of economic, environmental, or other health impacts, which, you know, that's the definition of an invasive species, you know, causing economic, environmental harms or health impacts to people. So we don't want to bring in something that's actually invasive. And it's very, very tightly regulated. There are multiple levels of government at the federal and the state levels that are involved. Right now, we're talking with DATCAP and federal folks about a potential Japanese knotweed, well, the entire knotweed complex. There's actually 2 species and a hybrid that we have here. We've got that discussion going on because there have been some really promising results of weevil, and that it is not shown to harm anything else. And now it's a matter of testing it to see if it'll work here. So far, the only test I've been able to hear about, the weevils were released on knotweed that was in a controlled situation, and they just kind of took off. So effectiveness, of course, is very important too. So one of the things about biocontrol we always have to remember is it's a management tool. It's part of the whole integrated pest management type of a situation. You cannot completely control a population as in eradication by using biocontrol. So you're looking at a predator-prey relationship, as basic as your ecology education gets. You've got a fox and a rabbit example that probably all of us have heard about at one point, where when the rabbit population is high, then the fox can gobble them up, and then their population is going to go down as the rabbits go down. But then as the fox start to run out of rabbits, and their population is going to slow down on increasing, and the rabbit population go up again. So it's back and forth and back and forth. And then there's other things that can affect it. You've got weather fluctuations. I've noticed paying more and more attention to this, of course, now as coordinator, but even before then, it seems like riverine systems are much more of a challenge, and it probably has to do with water fluctuations. And of course, catastrophic events. The major flooding situations that happened, one big example was up at this Northwest area a couple years ago. If that flooding is taking place while the beetles are pupating, it's a very good chance that they're going to drown out, and that's going to affect the viability of your program, because their baby beetles aren't going to show up, or the new beetles, I should say, aren't going to show up. And then freezing. If the beetles come out, if the beetles were to come out and then we have weather like we have right now, if they're insects, they can be killed by extreme cold. And it was 27 here in Jefferson, down in Jefferson, Wisconsin, Jefferson County this morning. So it's I was trying to remember why I chose that particular picture, because that's another that's a native species which has a particular relationship, just like with a monarch and milkweed species. So just it's a classic relationship. But anyway, if purple loosestrife is the only thing in your wetland, as other than narrowleaf cattail, at least it's something for pollinators. So maybe not totally controlling it isn't a terrible thing. The problem is it's like having a salad bar that's only open at 4 o'clock till 4:30, and there's nothing else to eat the rest of the day. And the purple loosestrife is the only thing on the salad bar. So you want diversity, obviously. So Wisconsin got into this because purple loosestrife was showing up everywhere in the 80s and 90s, and I really don't know quite how far back that it went. But this map this one came from the Invasive Species Archive that is managed out of the Natural Heritage Bureau. But there's probably more sites than this. We don't always get them reported accurately, and this map actually shows more than what comes up on the DNR's aquatic the lakes and AIS viewer, which also shows known locations. Just because people find it, they don't always report it, and in the past, some folks weren't doing as good a job of getting them on the map, so to speak, as we could have. And it's not obviously just in Wisconsin. We're rarely the only state that has a problem with specific species. So you can see we're in the hot zone. We've got, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and then all our neighbors to the east pretty much have it. And then there's a lot of populations out west, and then scattered. It's scattered really in, looks like most states. And it likes to be anywhere it can keep its feet wet. The picture in the upper left, the riverine system, That's actually the Wolf River up near Menominee. And I just found out, I've been using this picture for quite a while. And well, the 2 years that I've been putting together presentations on this anyway. And it turns out that the photo, which is by Andy Hudek of DNR, was just taken in 2019. That is a serious infestation. But like I say, it's along a river. So once it gets established in there, if it's a river that the waters are going up and down a lot, it's hard to control. I knew Andy took the picture. I just had no idea when until I recently was digging through some photos right in the DNR's SWIMS database where we keep our data. And there's a few more places you can find it. The picture on the right, I'm just so surprised that's even there. That's along John Nolan Boulevard in Madison. You just wouldn't expect it there because they do a lot of work in Madison on their roadways and their right of ways. Now you go up to Wausau, particularly just north of the river crossing with the Wisconsin River, and the medians are just chock full of purple loosestrife. And every time I go up there, I think, where are those seeds going? Are they actually washing right down into the river to be redistributed? But we've got potential to work on that too. So this is Brock. Some of you may actually know Brock. He retired last year about this time, and he started the program in the mid-1990s. He was a DNR LTE at the time, and he was taking all the information that they already had come up with through the various levels of approval, and then saying, will this work in Wisconsin? And then from his research on that, developing the program, which we have used since approximately 1998. His program wasn't just something for DNR to use, but to engage volunteers to use. And he grew that program so efficiently right from the get-go that he actually managed to pull off getting DNR to contract his work through extension, which that's what I do, to be able to take it on full time. And then he went on to work on other wetland invasive species such as Glyceria maxima and Phragmites. One of the most important things that he did, I think maybe anybody could do the research, but I think Brock did a phenomenal job then in bringing people into the program. I mean, his list of partners, nothing in that list in front of you is anybody new that I added. These are the types of groups that were involved from the get-go. Some of them might have never gotten any further than a training session on how to do it, but hundreds of people actually have been rearing beetles every year. This year, I've sent out about 41 or 2 permits. Minimally, those folks are raising 10 plants. Some of them are raising up to 50, and every plant has a potential of rearing 1,000 beetles for release. So there's, we're on track definitely to release over 100 to 200,000 beetles this year. So those folks on the lower right there, the Klingbergs, they were actually my first purple loosestrife partners back in 2016, I think, 15 or 16. We have a lot of roles to play. I do the list there on the left. I do a lot of the coordination. I try to get people partnered up. I will hopefully be able to teach Eric how to help collect beetles, because I have a bunch of partners in Waukesha County that are going to need beetles. So I'm excited on many levels that we've got a new coordinator coming on, and in Washington County. And then I help with the beetles, but not as much as Brock did, because, well, I didn't get to help at all last year because of COVID, but Brock's job description and mine are different. He wasn't doing the AS outreach side of it, so this is a smaller part of the job for me, and this, I just don't have the budget and the time allowed for it. But through the partnership with the Wisconsin Aquatic Invasive Species Partnership and that program I mentioned at the start, we've got tons of coordinators out there now who have actually taken on the role of helping with biocontrol. And it's great because they can collect beetles for starting those plants. They can help people get their plants going and then collect the beetles, because we put 10 on each plant. And it doesn't make any sense for me in the southern part of the state to try to coordinate that in the north. There's even in the central part of the state, because the plants are growing at different times, the beetles are coming out at different times. Madison beetles are not going to be helpful in Superior. And then the volunteers can do a ton of things. I mean, if you could rear beetles at your house, you can help sew nets, you can, maybe you just want to get out and play in the wetland and go help dig or release the plants after the beetles have grown. Just any part of that that people can help with is always welcome. In fact, I'm going to try and find someone to help me cut all the netting I have in stock on big rolls in the DNR, one of the DNR warehouses in Madison this year, and see if I can get the local Madison volunteers to help me get all that stuff sewn up.
Hey,
So
Jamie, quick question. You mentioned permits, and I got a couple questions about it. So I just wanted to really quick hit.
Yeah.
Are the permits to raise the beetles or to release them? I think if I remember right, there's a permit for each.
Well, the permit is two parts. The permit is actually, but I'm going to explain that. So when I get down to it, I'll explain it then. How's
Okay.
that?
Perfect.
So that way we don't have to repeat.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to show a summary here of the program. So basically planning is in the late winter. Technically, this is, I love this graphic. I've used this since I started working. I initially started with DNR and I've used it since then in 2013. But really planning should start well before that for the coordinators, because you need to know there's purple loosestrife to work on. If all you've got is 2 or 3 plants around an entire lake, you don't need a biocontrol program. You need somebody to go out with a shovel and maybe the same buckthorn buster of Roundup that you use on buckthorn, use it on the plant. You know, you don't need to do anything else. It wouldn't be effective. Your beetles would starve to death. But if you got a big patch or multiple patches, especially all over the county, or all over a specific wetland or natural area, then it's definitely worth doing. No chemicals involved. So anyway, you want to at least, the planning part where you're meeting with your partners and getting any land permissions you do in March. In April, we start to dig the plants up a lot. I would say probably all of the partners in the South have already dug their plants or are going to any day now. And even in the North, someone was planning to dig in Superior in Tuesday, but then they got snowed on. So I don't know if they went out or not. The plants don't care. They'll grow even if they get ice in their kiddie pool that we grow them in. Mid-May to early June, depending on where you are. That's when the coordinators and I are out collecting beetles, and we put 10 on per plant. And then basically we just let the plants do their thing and the beetles do their thing. And by late June, early July, we should see lots and lots of new beetles on those plants. And then we take them out to the release sites, which often are the same places we dug our starter plants from, sometimes not. And then you can always, go out and keep an eye on how they're doing. So the same thing in some pictures. There's Brock out there digging some rootstock. Then here's one of our little cello beetles. So once the plants are about 1.5 to 2 feet tall, we put on 10 beetles per plant, and they're all in, we refer to them cages, but they're net sleeves. And we put those on right away because you don't want predators or anything to get in once the plants are potted. So we put them in a pot when we planted, or after we dug them, we would have put them in the pot, put the sleeve over it, tie it up to something so that the plant, can freely grow up through it. And then within the 5 or 6 weeks that we have it going, the growth going on, the beetles will be mating if they haven't already. And sometimes you're lucky and they came with eggs already to be laid. Then you get all these little larvae, which they go through what are referred to as instars. Those are the stages of growth. And once they get through the 5th instar, they go down into the soil and pupate. And then they come back out as brand new beetles, and they will be starving, and they will come up and they'll decimate that plant and just fill that net. Sometimes you see the decimation part early. That might mean you didn't have a big enough plant and your larvae are doing it, in which case you'll need to get the plant out too. So then once you see the plant dying, the beetles all over the net, whichever the situation is, you need to get them out into your release sites. Lots of times it's by boat or kayak or paddle boat kayak combos we've had, because you can get them so far, but not like that last few feet to the edge of a wetland. Lots of places you can get out there and do it by foot. The tools of trade are pretty easy. You don't get my cat. I only send netting. If I happen to have that net at home to fold up and ship, or the few I do sew it sometimes if it's not too many. You might get a little cat hair on it. So hopefully I don't send it to anyone allergic. But we put those pots in kiddie pools like you saw in that picture. We have to put drain holes part way up, because just like I said, for a riverine system, you don't want your pupating beetles to drown. So if you keep water in there to imitate wetland conditions, and if you keep that water too high, the baby beetles can drown. So we drill holes that are a little lower than soil level in the pots. And we use good soil. You want to use potting mix or add fish fertilizer or something. They are used to very high nutrients. And then, like I say, we collect our own beetles. They've been here for 25 years. We have established naturalized populations now. And so people will go out, we have these bottle traps that are super easy to make, where you take it out and you hold the plant, you kind of give it a shake, you'll see the beetles crawling all over, and their response to being disturbed is to drop. So if you can hold it over the bottle trap and just gently move that stem that they're on, they'll just drop right in the beetle trap, obviously with the cotton ball out. And other people collect directly into Ziploc bags. And that tool is an aspirator. And sometimes I'll get my bottle full, I'll dump it into a big Ziploc bag, but people only need 10 per plant. So we'll loan out these aspirators and they can pull out the beetles they want that way. It's kind of fun to use, and you can do it without sucking up a beetle or beetle poop. They can make a lot of mess. They're kind of like a mouse that way. And then I have a ton of resources. Where do I have the application must come after this. We have a website that's on the DNR website or web pages. So if you just Google purple loosestripe biocontrol WDNR, you will get that as your first link. Got to use the W though. If you put in DNR, you might get Minnesota or somebody else. And I hear they don't do as well as us. So, but and there's ID information there. There's forms that we use. One of them, there's a really detailed guide, but then I'm really excited to have done this one last year, because this is like my quick and dirty guide, because it's got lots of pictures in it. The big guide does too, but this puts it down to nuts and bolts as far as what you need, when you need, and how to do things in the least complicated way. Long list, but there are things you can check off. So the questions about the application. So these are required because purple loosestrife is a restricted species. So you're actually not getting permitted to do anything with the beetles. You're getting permitted to move the plants, dig them out of the wetlands, and instead of destroying them, you're taking them somewhere to intentionally raise, which would be against NR 40, the invasive species rule for the state. And then once you release the beetles, most of the time you're taking the whole plant back out to the wetland and leaving it out there, uncovering, taking off that net to let your beetles go. So that's why we need the permit. And so we have a permit application. It's got, it includes the various things you need to know, so you know what it is you're signing on to. And then the beetle release is the considered part 2 of the permit requirements. So people fill out the application, which is available on the website. Then they send that to me or to the DNR AS info web address down there. That's mailbox me and someone else check. It's also where people send for publications. And then there's a permit template that I worked up with Maureen Ferry, who's the AIS monitoring coordinator, and she's the one who is the official person to sign off on aquatic invasives related permits. And then, but I actually do everything in the template and just CC her and the local AIS DNR coordinators, and I let the regional coordinators, excuse me, the county, if the county has a coordinator, I let them know what's going on. So once Eric starts, I'll be filling him in on all the people who are permitted and what they're doing in the county. And then the release form, that's also available. And actually, for anybody who's doing it this year, I'm going to do a training on May 20th to go over the release form. And one thing that I don't have in this presentation, because I didn't have it yet when I initially put this together, we now have a beetle presence and activity form. There used to be one called a site revisit form that Brock had, and it was for people to go and see what how were the beetles doing after they got released? Were the plants dying really well, or were they not growing back well like you'd hope, that kind of thing. But it wasn't getting used widely, and it had about 3 different methods of measuring whether or not the beetles were active and how things were going. So I simplified it and set it up very similar to the release form. So, and then people do occasionally, I get asked a lot, can you just send me beetles to release? And cute dog, Brad. And I don't provide beetles in that way. None of our partners do either. We only provide them through the project. There's a lady in Madison who does collect beetles and sell them. As I understand, it's like 50 cents a beetle. And you know, to do a real decent job, you need like 10,000 beetles if you've got a decent sized site. So that's pricey, but I could have the number wrong too. But anyone who's interested, I give her phone number too. And then some people just go out and collect themselves and move them. And in that case, I do like them to use the beetle release form just so I know what's going on where. It's not a requirement, but it's just handy for me to know. And this is just a couple pictures I happened to find. The AS coordinator up in Burnett County, Tom Beauvais, shared a whole bunch of old purple loosestrife data and images with me. And so these are from the Trade River, where in 2004, you can see that site was pretty purple, and it's probably extends beyond that photo. And you can see in the 2006 picture, those kind of dark gray, they're difficult to see, but those are the dead stems from 2 years earlier. Some might have been from the following year, because like I say, eradication is not really possible, but the beetles, number of beetles that were released here did a mighty good job it'd be interesting to go see how that site is doing now. And that's all I got. So I can take any other questions that you may have. I can get the window to open. For some reason, I can't. There we go.
Awesome. Cool. Jeannie, that's really exciting. This project is so fun. Like, especially I was thinking with kind of people being quarantined still and kind of wanting to do something on their own and wanting to contribute to conservation. I thought, this is something you can do in your own backyard. I'm really excited to do this. I want to do it this year. I finally have my own yard, so I can do it.
You got a patch you want to work on?
Yeah, I have a few, and so that's another thing. If people have patches in this area or just need to know where patches are around the southeastern Wisconsin kind of lake country area, feel free to get a hold of me because I have just working knowledge burned into my brain about where these patches of purple loosestrife is. I can either connect them with you, Jeannie, or as Eric comes on, help him out with getting to know where some of these are.
Yeah. And like I said, I think I have 3 or 4 people, and well, one of them in Waukesha County, actually, she collects her plants down near Scuppernong, but then she actually rears them and takes them up to Oneida County to the lake that she's at. But I have 3 or 4 Waukesha individuals working on it this year, and one large project in Washington County. I might have 2 up there. So yeah, if people want to go through you and then connect to me, because then they'll come knowing they have a site that they can work on. Anyone who wants to do it should get rolling though pretty quick, because the plants are up. And and the beetles will probably be out in our area by mid-May. So you want to try to get that 1.5-foot growth. So I'm telling anybody whose plants are pokey right now, they probably want to give it a little fish emulsion fertilizer or something like that to get them going.
Okay, good to know.
Will slow the beetles down.
It's funny that you, as a AIS coordinator or somebody doing this project, it's funny that you really help these purple loosestrife plants in order to later destroy them. It's always kind of cracks me up. It's kind of satisfying though. I actually have a neighbor like down the street who grows a giant purple loosestrife plant in his yard every year. So I'm like, every year I grow the beetles, as near as I can. It's kind of funny.
Neighbors who sneak beetles into neighbors' properties. Let's see, Meredith asked about, we worked with Brock. Cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like I say, sometimes it comes back, and it's that box and rabbit thing.
Yep.
Just go up and down, and like even down here, like look at last April and May, we had some incredibly cold weather pop up out of the blue. Or was it maybe it was the year before? I mean, crazy April snows and deep freezes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, and then extreme rain events. I'm sure all of that has taken its toll on the beetles. The purple loosestrife doesn't care. I had I had 2 plants one year when I was doing them at home that they were sickly. They weren't doing anything. I wasn't going to waste some poor little beetles' lives on them. And I took them out and I just set the pots on my, on this little concrete slab, patio slab, in full sun. It was a hot as heck year. The plants looked totally dead. They looked totally dead for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. As soon as it rained, the shoots came up. I used as soon as it rained, I finally gave up, put them in a black trash bag. And if you can get rid of any invasive plant, if you put it in a plastic trash bag label it, if, you know, my county isn't looking, I don't even bother to label it, but if you're in an area which is watching, you can put WDNR approved for landfill invasive species on the bag, and they're supposed to take it.
Nice.
Yeah, putting the beetles on will certainly help if you're moving them around. It's not as effective as raising, you know, 3 plants and putting 30 beetle, you know, 10 plants on each, and you might get 3,000 beetles, but it's better than nothing. They're still going to eat. The trick is, if you're just going to collect some beetles and put them out somewhere, you want to collect them in May to very early June, because you want to capture the ones that are going to still lay eggs or have the potential to lay eggs. If you're capturing beetles in July, when new beetles are coming out of the soil, those beetles are just going to eat. They will stress the plant, but they're just going to eat, and then they're going to go back into the soil to overwinter. So the most effective time to do that would be coming up here in the next month to month and a half.
And if you're collecting them in one spot and moving them to a different spot during that mating period, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeannie, you're potentially helping them by diversifying their genetic pool a little bit too, maybe making them a little bit stronger. Yeah.
That would make sense.
I have a question that I was just thinking of while you were speaking. And so each plant can produce, you put 10 beetles on one plant in the net, that produces about 1,000 beetles. How many beetles does it take to stunt the growth of a purple loosestrife plant? So if I grow 10 plants this summer and I have, 10,000 beetles, how effective will that be in area?
It's hard to say. I don't know if I haven't seen any specific research on that. I don't have it handy. Brock did have an estimate that he did of how many beetles you might need for a certain size patch. And it's just not one of those things I can remember off the top of my head. I can try and look that up and send it to Brad so that he could share that with everybody. But yeah, I mean, if you got the old beetles eating, the larvae then eating, and then some new beetles coming up and eating, they're putting pretty significant stress on that plant. I'm always amazed. One of Brock's research sites that he set up what we refer to as a mass rearing cage, where you can fit several kiddie pools into them. They're 12 by 12 foot. And so you're raising, 6 or so plants in every one of the kiddie pools. And he would set up these things actually right in the wetlands. But he didn't use the kiddie pools even. He potted his plants and put them right there. And out at Rome Pond in western Jefferson County, there's an area called Texas Island. And when you hike out to it, there's a real expansive wetland there before you get out to where the Bark River runs through to the pond. And when he started the research there, the plants were so tall he had to stand on a step ladder, like a 6-foot ladder, to get high enough in order to take a photo of the wetland, because it was so packed with purple loosestrife right up to your face. And plants get to be 6 feet tall, and every one of them will leave 2 million seeds if it's a big healthy plant. So 2 million each. So now I go out there, and the narrowleaf cattail is filled in the entire thing practically, but I might find 2 plants, and the flowers will be 5-6 inches tall, and they'll hardly have any petals. They're obviously not producing any healthy seed. It's just a plant still hanging on. So
Wow.
Get total eradication, but boy, you can do a heck of a job if you get enough beetles out there and get them going.
Yeah, I can attest to that. There's a park on the corner of M and Highway 33 and right outside of West Bend, like in Saukville. And we released beetles one year. I'm pretty sure it was for the first time ever. And within 3 years, it was same thing. Like the plants were getting maybe 5 inches tall and just looked mangled.
Yeah, is that the
Um,
one, Golden something?
Oh man, I can't remember the name of the park. It's really small.
Yeah, I went there with, that was Sam. What was her name? The before Samantha Lammers.
Oh, uh,
I feel bad.
yeah, me
I
too.
can picture her face and I can't think her name. Anyway, I went out with her and her interns and we checked that
Cassie.
site. Still doing good, Cassie. They're still doing good. The plants were, you know, like 3 feet tall at the most, 2 to 3 feet tall. And when they're under control but still growing, you'll see they take on like a candelabra shape. When the plants are still pretty robust or really robust, they get, like I say, up to 6 feet tall, and they have a few spires of just solid fuchsia colored plants. If they're under control or if they're being mowed, if they're on a roadside, they'll take on a candelabra shape and they'll be bushier, like that one I showed earlier on John Nolan Drive. And if the beetles are controlling them rather than mowing, then the flowers won't look so great.
Right. So if anybody is interested in growing purple loosestrife beetles, I know I'm willing to help you out. I can work with Jeannie, or you can contact Jeannie directly. But I'm right here in Southeast Wisconsin, so if you guys need the help from me, feel free to reach out. Once again, you can reach me. I'll put my email in here really quick. So feel free to email me or email Jeannie. But it's a really fun project. It's low maintenance. It's you get to sit there and watch plants grow, and then you get to sit there and watch beetles multiply. And then when you go out, you can kind of make a day of it. If you have kids or grandkids who are into like natural science, it's a really fun project. I got a little neighbor next door, so I'm excited to kind of let him run it and watch him like grow the beetles. So that'll be kind of cool. But does anybody else have any questions, or can Jeannie clarify anything with the purple loosestrife project for anyone? All right, and we can open this up to questions for Alan too, with native shoreline projects as well, if he's still around. I don't know if he had to get off or not. Looks like he might have. All right. Well, I really appreciate it. I want to thank everyone for being on the call. Once again, it's just a super awesome opportunity to share what's going on. And I hope you guys had a good time chatting with each other and catching up. Hopefully you talked to somebody cool and had a little conversation. So as we move forward, we are doing the Healthy Lakes Conference June 4th. That you have the option to be in person. So if you're into that idea, feel free to register. I'm excited to see people in real life. And then from then on, we'll be determining, we'll probably do the same thing for future conferences or future quarterly meetings, where they will be in both in person and on Zoom for the time being. So with that, I want to thank all of you, thank everybody, and just say we really appreciate your support at Lake Country Clean Waters, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully we'll see you at the Healthy Lakes Conference. Oh, and thanks so much, Jeannie.
Thanks, Brad.